Did you think that Sunak last night was a very good, fluid performance? He's eventually learned how to do all of this. And do you think that's because he thinks it's all over?
No, I don't think it's fair to say it's all over. Rishi and Liz have very different personality styles. Liz is a little bit more set back, whereas Rishi is, you almost see it sort of bubbling out of him in terms of his passion and his charisma. And I do think he truly believes that he will do what is best for the country and with everything that's going on.
Do you believe he'll do what is best for the country? In other words, we know Holly has voted for Liz Truss. Have you cast your vote yet?
I have not cast my vote yet. I will be casting mine online today, before the deadline. And I will be for Rishi. And I do think that, he was the Chancellor during the pandemic. He led us through an incredibly difficult time. Yes, everything he did wasn't popular. However, with this current cost of living crisis, we don't have months, we don't have years, we have days and weeks that we need to really set out and do something about it. Otherwise, people up and down the country are already feeling the hardship, and we don't have time to delay. And I think that's why Rishi is the best person going forward.
You see, for the vast majority of people in this country, Holly, aren't Conservative members. They don't have any say in this. But I think if I was one, I probably would have taken the position of Rishi and not voted till the last minute, so I could have heard all the arguments. Why did you decide to cast your vote so early on? Yeah. And do you have any regrets? Or, given that you said to me before the programme started, Rishi had the room last night at Wembley, a big room.
Yeah, I mean, Rishi did really well last night, and Rishi is a really kind of slick media performer and always does well in that setting. And don't get me wrong, I've always said from the beginning, whoever wins, I'd get behind them. But by the time I'd voted, I think I'd already heard about 3 or 4 hustings. So, I had the opportunity to really listen to the debates. And also we had that whole kind of parliamentary stage, didn't we, where we really knew what they both stood for. So that's kind of why I made my choice quite early on.
And do you accept that a lot of what Liz is saying is playing to her current electorate rather than the wider audience? And this suggestion that she is saying there will be no blackouts this winter, how can she say that?
I think she, it's not necessarily saying there'll be no blackouts, and God hope there's not. I think she was saying that she didn't want to have rationing. I think that was her kind of emphasis. And certainly she is
Sorry, you're going to have to explain that to me. There's either going to be rationing, what? There's going to be blackouts or not blackouts. What is she head of electricity now? How can... She's simply made a claim that she cannot substantiate in any matter or form because she doesn't know what is going to happen.
And nobody knows what's going to happen. That's the reality of it. And I think, we're all worried about the winter ahead of us. And I think Liz, if she gets in on Monday, and I hope she does, she's got a tough job and she really needs to get to business straight away. She's talked about this fiscal event or budget, whatever it might be. And it's important she just gets on with it and provides the support.
No, it's important they tell the truth and they're realistic. Why couldn't you just say, who knows, we don't know what way the war in Ukraine is going to be, but I'll tell you, I will do my darnest to make sure that the lights will stay on, which people would understand or applaud.
Is what Rishi said, to be fair.
Yes, and I think, and that's the thing about what yesterday differentiated for me. Liz was saying everything I wanted to hear. Liz she can pull at the heartstrings. However, we are in a crisis at the moment. We are in an incredibly challenging time. And actually, I think we need that realism that, yes, we can have ambitions to move towards what Liz is saying, but now is the time to actually get on and solve this issue.
Here's what made me angry. Well, they're pouncing around that stage, yet another stage, last night. I hear today that hospitals around the land could be faced with an extra £2 million a month in terms of their electricity bills, right? And that will have to come out of a clinical budget. Now, instead of Boris Johnson dressed up as Postman Pat or whatever he was doing yesterday, running around in an anti-stab vest, playing to the cameras, he should be in making policy, or they should be in making an agreed policy whereby they say, hospitals, they're our responsibility. We're going to look after hospitals, we're going to look after schools. We're going to fit the bill on that.
Yeah, I think, this is the reality that we're going to have a new government on Monday, and they do really need to get on with it. I think that issue of an energy price cap, not just for the domestic user, but for organisations and businesses, is a really important one, because we've seen so many businesses struggle as well as the NHS. So, there's a lot to do. There's a huge in-trade. Both Liz and Rishi said that last night. There's a huge in-trade that they need to get on with. I think for Boris, he's kind of going around doing his final lap in his last few days. But the reality is the candidates are kind of shadowing out what they're going to do and speaking to civil servants behind the scenes.
In reality, do you think there can ever be a Conservative Party leadership contest like this that goes on so long, especially at a time of crisis? Or do you think that significantly the rules need to be changed substantially, is what I'm trying to say.
It was certainly too long. You know, it's been a long summer, and I know I've had many of the same conversations and debates many times. It is important that the candidates are tested and they go around the country and talk to as many people as possible and as many different members as possible. But I think they certainly have had that test, and it has been elongated.
I just want to, Charlie, my producer, if I get the stat wrong, correct me, but if Liz Truss wins on Monday, am I right in thinking she'll be the first Prime Minister in this country to have not been voted for by the people or by MPs?
Theresa May, was she...
Theresa May was chosen by...
Gordon Brown, what happened there?
Am I correct? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Theresa May became Prime Minister before she had an election.
There was
without...
a coronation, wasn't
yeah,
it? So she was chosen by MPs. Anyway, I think that's a stat that we can hold up, but we'll check it out.
Why did you bring that up?
I don't know. I thought it was interesting. But I'll check it out.
But I think it's a good quiz question.
Yeah, we'll put it down on our list, our long list.
Listen, I'll tell you who's on our list now. We are going to Jo Letchford. Good morning, Jo. Jo is in East Malling. She is in Kent. And hello, Jo. Very nice to see you. She's a GB News viewer. And
we've had you before.
Listener.
Yes.
Welcome back. So, Jo, what do you want to say about all of this? I mean, you know, you can sense from our mood this morning, we're glad it's the final day of having to talk about this. I suppose you feel the same?
Absolutely. I have listened to a few of the hustings, during the time. I actually listened to it on the radio when I got in from bridge quite late last night, and I think the 21 games of bridge were far more interesting than what was going on at these hustings. It sounded like a game show.
Yeah, well, it is. That's the way these things turn into. I mean, they're all Americanized, really. That is what it's like.
It's really uncomfortable that we've got to this. You know, a few months ago, OK, we were having Partygate for goodness how long, and now it just seems to have turned upside down. It's just awful.
It's awful, and it is a complete open door, I would have thought, Jo, for any opposition party, Labour, Lib Dems, whatever it happens to be. And sometimes I'm surprised that they just haven't kicked the door down and taken over and said, because, you know, while Boris Johnson's dressing up as a policeman yesterday, that awful news that hospitals will have to pay an extra £2 million a month on their energy bills, which will be more cancelled operations, more job redundancies, more people not being looked after. It's disgraceful. Yeah. Somebody needs to be working behind a desk and doing something.
Yes, exactly. But who? You know, I'm afraid the
well, Boris, I would suggest, while he's still there.
Pardon? Well, I mean, to be honest, they made it very clear they wanted rid of Boris Johnson, whatever you think of him, but then they've criticised him for the last few weeks for not doing anything. But I seem to remember he was almost threatened at one of those committee meetings that you will not go for an election, you will not do this, you will not do that, as if he was a small child. So I think he's just gone off and decided to let everybody get on with it.
Jo, you're absolutely right, and he did promise he would just be a caretaker, didn't he? What do you make of some of the speculation that I've been reading in some of the papers that Rishi Sunak, who's got this kind of, what do we call it, you know, sort of not really care, he's got nothing to lose attitude that he had last night because he's won the argument, was what he's been saying, but he's lost this contest. Some suggestions that whoever inherits this job on Monday has a poisoned chalice, and whoever loses could actually end up being Prime Minister further down the line. So do you think that if Rishi Sunak doesn't win on Monday, he could still be Prime Minister one day?
Well, I doubt that, actually. And you're quite right that I think that he probably knows that he's lost this contest. But, you know, I do watch GB News virtually all the time, and on Dan Wootton, I believe the night before last, it was revealed that he sat round the cabinet table against the lockdowns, and why on earth didn't he get up from the table, resign, and save us all this heartache? He's spent all these billions of pounds helping everybody out, keeping their jobs, and these poor people are probably going to lose their jobs anyway if they're in hospitality, because the pubs and everything are going to close. So that's what I don't like, is the fact that he had the responsibility to say this can't happen, but he just sat there and then
well, that's politics. That's politics for you. And we've got two politicians in the studio here, and I'm going to get them to speak to you and maybe, ease your concerns on that. Rishi, first of all, who is a mayor. He's the mayor of where? That is good. Mayor of where? So what would you say there to Jo and her concerns about? A lot of people think it's quite easy that, he should have just got up and resigned if he did object. But politics and the machinations of politics and staying in the game, could you want to explain that to her?
Exactly. It's one of those that, had he taken a step back earlier, you can't help steer the ship unless you're on the bridge, so to speak. So I think it was the right decision for him to be there. It was an incredibly challenging time. He became the Chancellor just weeks before the pandemic started to kick off. And I think stepping back mid-crisis would have been the wrong decision. So I think it was right that he stayed on. I agree that, the pandemic, lockdowns, restrictions, they weren't ideal. However, at the time, it was based off the information we had. And that's why now I think he is the best person going forward, because whether you like the furlough scheme and the measures that were put in place, he was able to bring them in just a matter of weeks, and that's what we need right now with this current crisis.
Holly, what would you say?
I think it's difficult, isn't it? It's always a balancing act when you're looking at whether you should stay or go. But, I mean, if Rishi did have those concerns at the time, I suppose hindsight's a great thing to say it now, but perhaps he should have been saying it more at the time. But it is a difficult balancing act. I mean, at the time they were dealing with a national emergency. It was a really difficult, challenging period, and it's all very well for us to kind of talk about it now, but it was a very unprecedented time.
It is interesting to note that the ardent Boris fans, which, Joe, I would put you in that bracket, don't make the same criticism of Boris Johnson. You didn't sort of question why he was in favour of the lockdown. So it's difficult to always treat these politicians with the same level of scepticism. It all gets very personal, doesn't it? Look, a final thought then on Jo there, Holly. She said that she may not vote Conservative again. Do you worry that the outcome of this leadership election on Monday could lose some Conservative voters in the long run?
I think whoever wins now has got a huge challenge to unite the party, and actually I think Liz will do that. I think that's her, other than getting on with the huge issues that this country faces, kind of uniting the Conservative Party so that we're fit to fight and win the next election is really, really important.
And Mayor Fernando, no matter who wins, what would you say to Jo about the party?
I'd say the party's a broad church, and that, as has always been the case, we will get behind whoever becomes the next future Prime Minister, be that Rishi or Liz. And I think with what is going on at the moment, it's the Conservative Party that's the one that will tackle head-on this cost of living crisis. So, I think they are the party to support and, have faith.
Jo, thank you very much indeed. Rishi, thank you. And Holly, thank you very much indeed. Jo, just final thing before you go. Jo, what about the bridge? Did you win the bridge last night, or what was it? Was it a good session?
We came in the middle. We usually come bottom, so yeah, something's happening.
Oh.
Good for you.
You said you were in late last night. Do you have a little cup of tea or anything to celebrate these things?
A nightcap.
Is there a nightcap?
A coffee I have.
Okay.
Very good.
No wonder you're up early. That's kept you buzzing all night.